Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf.
This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Suits bragging to me, by the way, Todd, that he got the Peacock $1.99 a month deal because he wants to watch every single qualifying run in the month of May at Indianapolis, the Peacock Black Friday deal.
I don't know about all that.
I texted him back. I said, I'm dropping it in 2 minutes. I don't need to see cars go around in a circle against anybody else. Come on. I mean, why did you have a race where you got people on the Beltway? See who wins that. Okay. I might watch that. All right. Or the Schuylkill Expressway. He wants to watch one car go around in a circle. Okay. All right. Today's show brought to you by Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury, Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf, and online at sunburymotors.com. Ford, Kia, Hyundai, best in new inventory, great pre-owned inventory with the Sunbury Motors guarantee. Terrific service department, backs it all up every step of the way. Routine, difficult to handle it all at Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15, Hummel's Wharf, online, sunburymotors.com. It is Tuesdays. Time now for Tuesdays with Neal. Sir, always a pleasure.
The pleasure is mine, as always. Thank you, gentlemen, for having me.
Well, all right. So let's start with Mike Tomlin. When they got to the question about his future, he walked out and left yesterday. What does it say about a coach in a season like this that they still went 10-7 and made the playoffs and are consistently drafting every round in the 20 to 30 position? Does he at least get that level of respect?
I think he gets the respect, but here's the thing, and whether, albeit unpleasant as it might be to consider here, but maybe Mike Tomlin isn't the one on the hot seat with the Steelers. Maybe the Steelers are on the hot seat with Mike Tomlin. If you look at this as from a holistic perspective, everything you said is exactly true. They're drafting in the 20s. They're having, albeit limited, success without a whole lot of payout at the end of the year. But if we look at this team player for player, go back to 2014, 2015, 2016, a mini run the Steelers had there, they fared a little bit better. Not a ton better, but a little bit better. And the difference in talent between those two teams is astronomically in favor of the earlier version of it. Not only have the Steelers failed to identify players of that ilk, but typically it's not even close, with the exception, of course, of J.J. Watt, possibly Minkah Fitzpatrick. It makes you wonder after a while. The results are, as Led Zeppelin would say, things remain the same. How much of this is Tomlin no longer wanting to deal with whatever it is that's stagnated inside the franchise at for them, a historical level? They haven't gone this long without winning a playoff game in a very long time, something like 50 years, I think. It hasn't been good football a lot of the time. You and I have talked about this. I would argue the 2021 Steelers might have been the worst team Kevin Colbert had in his era, and they somehow went to the playoffs.
Yeah.
Mike Tomlin deserves a tremendous amount of respect for doing that. But where is the bar set right now for this franchise? And it makes you wonder, considering, as we've talked about, he did not sign a contract extension last year. I'm not saying one was offered to him. The team might not have wanted to do it either. I don't know. But the fact is, they made Mike Tomlin enter the final year of his contract, which started today, technically.
Yeah.
17-year head coaches don't do that. I can't stress that point enough. Something is going on. So for Tomlin, also, who doesn't walk out on questions, I don't know if that's ever happened, for him to do that, to not want to address this at all. He addressed the USC rumor from, 2 years ago, something like that, and that was as ridiculous as a question he's ever been asked.
He did.
He didn't talk about this at all, and this is tangible because he did not sign a contract. There's something going on, and I can't help but wonder how much of that is Tomlin possibly saying, you need to pay me more. If you're not going to, I kind of want to go somewhere else. And it's next week or so. I think it's going to be really interesting. I would pay attention. I don't think this is as cut and dry as people want to think that it is.
Well, I think here's the other part. I mean, unfortunately, Dan Rooney's no longer with us. Art Rooney II's the one that runs this team, and he runs it in his own way. And I am wondering, based at least on the people I know in Pittsburgh, all right, so I'm going a little bit on what some of the people I know there. It may not be the same relationship between those two as it was between Dan and Mike Tomlin.
And if that's the case, and we'll both play the hypothetical, if that is the case, it makes you wonder how long. I don't want to say it like this. I can't think of a better way to say it, but it makes you wonder how long the grieving process is. How long does Art, out of respect for his father, say we're going to do things this way before he decides we need to go a different way? Right. And I don't want to bring money up because everyone yells at me all the time that, Tomlin has gone on record saying it's not about money, blah, blah, blah. It's not about the cash. It's about the respect that the money brings. And if the Steelers are offering him, say, $15 a year, and Sean Payton is doing what he's doing right now in Denver with far less results, I can't help but think Mike Tomlin wants to be in the ballpark of Sean Payton. And $5 million is $5 million. Nobody says, oh, forget it, don't worry about it, that's nothing. That clearly wouldn't happen. If Art, who to this point, and we can charge Dan with some of this as well, if Art says, maybe it isn't the best strategy any longer to put all of our money into the head coach and not pay the assistants all that much, either by contract or by volume. They don't have very many coaches. Maybe that's a Tomlin thing. Maybe it's a financial thing. I'm not 100% sure. But what I know is, from a business perspective, they're paying Tomlin a significant salary. Yeah. He's getting more than most of his peers are. He's not at the top, but he's getting more than his peers are. They don't funnel that money down. They're not paying much for coordinators and haven't in a while, and you're seeing the results of that, certainly on the offensive side of the ball. Maybe this is a time where both sides just kind of see that, a break is necessary. The Steelers want to reset where they're at with their head coaching salary, perhaps bump up the salary of the assistants a little bit more, add some more coaching in there, some more direction, some more leadership, and not count on exclusively on a man who is, by all accounts, a fine leader in any regard. And I'm not dismissing Tomlin at all. It's just all of this to me kind of suggests maybe it's time to part ways, and that happens. That doesn't mean anybody's at fault. It doesn't mean anybody's getting fired. It's just they're proud, successful individuals, and they've brought about a lot of success together. Maybe they've plateaued, though, because you need significant change of some type because your seasons are all the same now. I don't know another way to put that. They have to do something, but I don't feel Tomlin deserves to be fired. He doesn't need, as all fans are running around grabbing the pitchforks and torches this morning. I don't think that he needs to be punished here. I think maybe the franchise just needs to go in a different direction, and this would be a good time to do it for where they are. Not now, but next season they'd have a good amount of cap space and a good amount of roster open. This is probably a good time to start shaping in a different way the next 3 to 5 years of the franchise.
Which then brings us to the next part of it, and that is Kenny Pickett. In the end, they went with Mason Rudolph to be the quarterback against Buffalo, which was the right call, in my opinion. He'd been playing well, and I thought for the most part gave a good account of himself in the game on Monday. But Kenny Pickett was drafted in the first round for a reason. You and I both know that as a first-round pick, you have to play your way out of the league. If you were a 4 to 7 or you're a free agent, you have to play your way into the league for that second contract. You've watched him. Is Kenny Pickett the long-term answer at quarterback, or does that need thought?
This is, as you probably imagine, come up a few times. For me, I think it really comes down to, not to get all semantic about it, but how do you want to define the answer? People want answer to look like Patrick Mahomes. He's not that kind of answer. He is their starter next season, not because he is Patrick Mahomes, but simply because, financially speaking, he's the most viable option for them over the next 2 years. I don't think anybody, with the exception of anyone related to Mitch Trubisky, thinks that Mitch Trubisky should be in Pittsburgh next season. That's not going to happen on his current contract. Rudolph is a free agent. If you were really excited about how Rudolph played, I'm pretty sure his agent noticed that as well. 4 games starting, going 3-1, and I agree with you. The first 12, 13 throws, I was a little concerned with where Rudolph was going. He ended the game pretty well. Not too bad, not great, but he ended it pretty well. He did some things that he wasn't doing early on. A little, day late and dollar short, but he availed himself fairly well in a difficult situation. Rudolph, if we just look at the free agent market as defined by Trubisky in his extension last year, which is, kind of leveraged, not exactly arm's length, but Rudolph is worth 2 years, $11 million per, based on the market right now. He just is. Except, not out of malice or pettiness or spite or anything, but I don't see why he would sign with the Steelers. That's the one team that's not going to give him a fair shake at a starting job that would be in the market for his services. It depends on who it is, and the market's not going to be very big, but if you've got 2 teams bidding on a quarterback, that price is going to go up. Right. And it's going to come down entirely to where they are with their starting quarterback, what direction they want to go in. He is going to be the best bridge starter in the NFL. That comes with the price tag of Trubisky up to, oh my God, I forgot his name. The kid in Denver, Simeon. Yeah. He was getting, I think, like 11, 10, 11, something like that.
Trevor Simeon.
Yeah, these guys are not meant to be starters, but they find themselves in situations where they end up starting a game or two. Maybe Joe Flacco jumps up a little bit, dollar-wise. That pushes the market forward. The Steelers can't afford Mason Rudolph, not this year, and the distraction that would create, knowing that Rudolph, by most measurements, exceeded the performance of Kenny Pickett with the new offensive coordinating staff in place. Now, Pickett only got 1 game of that, and that was probably Pickett's best game. So give him credit for that. To me, it makes a no-brainer situation for the team. If Rudolph did this, Pickett was our guy originally. We're going to stick with that. Pickett could probably do the same thing with this coordinator if that's who we're going to keep. So for me, I think it's a pretty linear decision. They had offensive success, something they haven't had in 2 years prior to Eddie Faulkner taking over. They'll keep him. Pickett's going to be their guy. He's the cheapest option. Rudolph walks. Maybe they get a comp pick because of that. But they probably cut Trubisky as well. So they still need 2 quarterbacks this year. Keep that in mind. They probably draft another one. But they're going to need to sign a veteran somewhere. Maybe it's Joe Flacco. I don't know. But not going to be a cost savings for them at that position this year, but they are going to flip that room over.
And I doubt you do anything with Pickens, but geez, every time I turn around, the guy's got to complain about something. And yesterday was another one where he's over on the sideline like somebody just wants to put a cape on him. He gets mad and throws the cape. Like between it's not that those guys aren't talented, but geez, I mean, at some point, doesn't character have to add into the talent part of it?
The only word for it now, it just simply is just immature. I think you probably, that 4th and 3 ball, I think you probably see a holding call on that.
Right, I agree.
40.
Right, I agree. I also
it wasn't
think
as
that
egregious
if you're really as
people
good
are
as
making it out.
you don't fumble in the
holding.
playoff game.
Yeah, then there's that's the part that I'm going back to. What are you really mad about? You didn't protect the ball. You had it exposed going down with the guy's shoulder and helmet coming right at you. There is not a more obvious time to protect the ball in the NFL. You're not paying attention. That is the one thing he's trying to do at that point. No excuse for that. I don't care what level of superstar player you are. There's no excuse for it. You might accuse Frymouth of the same thing, too. And These are the types of things that happen to this team in the playoffs that it infuriates those who watch it, because it's like you gave them the ball. I mean, Frymouth didn't count, but in my world probably should have. He shouldn't need to go down to frame by frame evidence of whether a ball glanced off his head or not. Right. Go with the call on the field, but if you're watching it and they're evaluating the play, they may as well call it a fumble. It doesn't matter if it's statistically there or not. That's a mistake. That's an error that should have cost the team more than it did. Pickens did count, and it was worse. You had multiple situations like that with Pickens this year, along with lots of bright spots as well. To paraphrase Mike Tomlin, ironically in this case, they'll keep the guys until they aren't worth keeping anymore. And I know that sounds simple, but what he's basically saying is, if he's going to act like a chowderhead, he's going to have to back it up on the field. And the second that he's not doing that, they'll get rid of him. I don't know how long that leash is going to be with Pickens, but I know this. If he doesn't put in the work this offseason and he doesn't become a better, more well-rounded receiver, he's running out of excuses and things to blame about why he's not dominating games in every area week in and week out, because he has that talent, he has that ability. They got him a new offensive coordinator. He got a new quarterback. He got the ball. He didn't get the ball. Sometimes he was happy. Sometimes he was upset. The game doesn't revolve around George Pickens, and until he gets that, I think we're going to have little outbursts like this. And him complaining about the official, I get it. On the field, I get it. Slams his helmet on the sidelines. That's not good, but that doesn't really bother me a whole lot. It's an emotional game. It's more going to the media and sounding like an idiot when you go to the media, complaining about the things that you're complaining about. There comes a point that you have to hold yourself accountable to the fact that you took points off the board for your team. You gave them to the other team. You not getting a holding call on 4th and 3 when you're down significantly in the game is not it's not a major problem in my mind.
Okay. So let's take the Apollo 13 approach. What is good on the spacecraft?
The spacecraft, when healthy, I think they've got, at worst, one of the 3 best defensive players in the game. They've got opportunities. Well, to be fair, defensively, I think they played well overall defensively. But the fact that they were down to like their 8th inside linebacker in a playoff game really didn't help. I mean, with all due respect, Miles Jack, he would have been on the field for one NFL team at this point, and that was the one you just watched. And he completely fell apart. You saw his age. You saw Patrick Peterson's age in this game. There are moves they can make, and I'm willing to bet there are moves that they plan to make. Jack wasn't supposed to be on the team, okay? They lost 3 starting-level inside linebackers this year. Landon Roberts was being held together by duct tape by the end, and he got hurt in the last one, too. I think he got hurt in each of the last 7 games. He had to do a lot to get on the field, and credit to him for continuing to battle out there, but poor Michael Walker doesn't belong on the field. Miles Jack didn't belong on the field. And these are guys that had to play significant snaps. If you get that shored up, I think their defense would have performed well throughout, consistently well throughout the season. Hard to play high-end defense every single week, but what we see today is the teams that are doing it, i.e. Baltimore, San Francisco, these are teams that have great inside linebackers, 3-down off-ball linebackers. that's probably something the Steelers need to address. But if they had that this year, which they tried to do, to their credit, I mean, they brought in a lot of them. If they had that, they would have been a very good defensive unit, and I think to some degree they can still do that next year. You have to like the growth and the development of their offense over the last 7 games of the season with Eddie Faulkner. I would imagine they would hire him. I don't think Mike Sullivan will call plays. I wonder if he's going to stick around as the quarterback's coach or they'll want him. But there will be pretty significant changes on the staff. But I think Eddie Faulkner will be back, and they can continue to build on something that looked like it worked over the last couple of games. Maybe they can get better in that regard. With it, you should have the makings of a better team for what we see of it. So I think overall they have team strength, but they got to get some more depth defensively. They got to get a bit faster in the secondary. Overall, you like the progress of the offensive line. Broderick Jones, I don't think, had his best game last night, but there's a lot to like there. You've probably got your offensive line minus the worst one, Mason Cole, coming back next season. So you plug in a center, preferably a veteran one. I think they've got a good offensive line going into camp. And with that, they have something they can build. They also have something they can tear down if they want to and completely start over. So it's going to be a really interesting offseason. There's some talent there. They just need to, they need to get better, plain and simple. It's pretty good, but how do you get a lot better in one offseason? That's the challenge that Omar Khan has in front of him right now.
Well, never a challenge when talking with you. You're the best, and now we're heading into some of the interesting part of the year that you and I always enjoy talking about, and that is the off season.
You got to love the transactional season, the business season of the NFL. It really is kind of what brings everything together. I enjoy that. I've come to enjoy that a lot more throughout my career as well, just because that's kind of the soap opera. That's kind of the action part beyond football. You're seeing just as competitive games being played amongst teams, amongst themselves. There's a lot that comes out of it. And I don't think last year was pretty interesting for the Steelers with the amount of money that they had to spend, the guys that they brought in. To me, this offseason touches, there's a question mark around everything surrounding the Steelers right now, up to and including the head coach. You don't know if he's going to step down tomorrow or not. He might. That's not, a junk rumor. He might. With that, you have an offensive coordinator you need to hire. They haven't done that for a while. Maybe it's Faulkner, maybe it's not. You can see that going either way. You're going to lose a lot of coaches here. That'll get fired up here in the coming weeks. They don't typically fire their coaches immediately following the season. They kind of take some time and go over stuff. But I think it's safe to say not everyone's coming back. They're not getting the band back together next year. So moves are going to come there. You also have major decisions with Cam Hayward, with Deontay Johnson. The personnel moves alone are pretty significant. So stay tuned. It's going to be crazy.
Well, you'll be back. How about that?
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, guys.
Neal Coolong.